This is the box centering challenge. It is a very, hopefully, very simple and quick challenge. It's designed as our very first introduction challenge when we do technical interviews. And the idea is to create a relaxing environment before we get into the more technical challenges. So the object is to take this red box and center it vertically and horizontally in the page. Before we get started, I want to point something out. You see this white gap here? That is the page margin. And I point it out here so that you can see it, because when we center this box, you won't be able to. And there is a gotcha with this margin. Okay? So we can wrap this up pretty quick. We just go body. We're going to put everything on the body. We're going to display grid. We're going to place items, not padding. Apparently I don't have a completion for this. Place items, center, just like this. That moves it to the center. And the reason that it doesn't go down is because even though we could attach a background color to this, the body collapses to its biggest content. Okay, so right now the body is actually only as big or only as high as our box. Okay, I know that sounds weird because you can add a background color, but trust me on that. As soon as we go min height of 100 VH, you'll see that it centers. Okay, or at least it's very close. There's a scroll bar in here. So a little bit of a gotcha there where things won't center because it needs some sort of a height. Now, we use min height here because if we add extra content, we want it to have scroll bars, okay? We want that all to work out. But the question is, why is there a scroll bar right now? Well, you remember at the start where I had that box right in the corner and it had the white borders? What happens if I turn those off, right? So if I go margin 0, it drives that right into the middle. If I go and turn all this back on again, like this, it's back to the center, but no more scroll bar. I'm trying to scroll, there is nothing. So this is the easiest way in my mind to center an object on the page, and it ensures that if we were to add other content, then we'd still be able to flow down the page. We aren't breaking things. Okay. Very simple challenge, very fast, right? Hopefully very easy. But it got me thinking, how many different ways can I center a box inside of another box, an element inside of another element? And I'm not the only one that's done this. My colleague, Jesse, has also done that. He went and found 9 versions, ways of centering this little black box inside the pink box. 9 of them. I took that, stole it, and added a few more. So I have 15, okay? And all different kinds. You'll notice that both Jesse and I use an ID here. I'm staying with that because I find it very easy to read the ID as opposed to having it in the class and I'd have to read past the container. The ID I can just scan for and grab. So in production, I wouldn't use an ID, but for fun tutorials, I absolutely do. Okay. So straight up padding is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to go and use padding. Now, what is the number that we're using? Well, we know that the container is 100 pixels and the child is 50 pixels. So if we do some math, that's 100 minus 50 is 50. 50 divided by 2 is 25. And the reason for that is because we have a left side and a right side, a top and a bottom, okay? So I can go up here, go padding of 25, and everything breaks. Why does everything break? Well, it breaks because padding is not included in width by default, okay? So we have the width, and then the padding is put on top of that. And that's not what we want, right? That's absolutely not what we want. We can change that behavior with border box, not that, sorry, border box like this. And what border box says is the entire width should be everything up to and including the border. So padding is inside the border, the content is inside the border, and the border is part of that as well. So content, padding, border, they all account for our width of 100 pixels. So when we do this, we get this magic number of 25 pixels. That's this side, and everything just centers. All good, okay? We can do that same sort of thing with margin. So we go and grab this, bring it down, copy and paste. Whoops, not with a space. And for this one, we are acting on the child element now. So if we put margin here, it will be on the outside. We want margin on the outside of the black box, right? So same thing, margin of 25. It's centered. Why is it centered? Because the box is pushing from all sides, okay? Moving on, we have JS Math, okay? Now, if that didn't clue you into where we're going, me opening the JavaScript tab definitely should, okay? So we're gonna grab our parent. Our parent is the colored box, and that's gonna be document.query selector, just like this. We're gonna grab that, so it's here. And then we're gonna grab the child as well, okay? And the child, we don't need to do any special math on that or special searching on that because we already have the parent, and the parent only has one div in it, okay? So we can just go, I can't type today, parent dot first element child. Is that right? Element child or child element? It is element child. I did get it right. Okay. So const top position equals some math. So what is the math? Well, we need to get the width of the parent. So we can do that. Parent dot width. It's actually on client width, which is very weird to me. And we really only want about half of that, okay? So we divide by 2. And then we do the same thing over here. So like this, child dot client width. Could have copy and pasted this, divided by 2. And then we attach that to the child, right? So we have child dot style, come on, style dot margins, like this. We set them all to that variable of top position. That is not going to work because it doesn't know what the measurement is. Is the measurement ems? Is the measurement kilometers? Is the measurement miles? Who knows, right? Well, it's actually pixels. So we need to add a px to the end of this. And now we get that center. Now again, if we got rid of this, it will center here, which is kind of like position absolute top 50%, left 50%, which is what we're getting. We don't want that. We want half of the width and half of this width, which puts us right there. So this actually translates out to 25 pixels, which is why it is centered. But it's JavaScript, right? That's not the easiest way to do a center, but it is an option if you were stuck there. We can move on to inline. Inline is a little bit interesting. Things jumping around. Inline is a little bit interesting because what we're going to do is right now this child box is a block level element. It's a div. And we're going to make it an inline element so that we can align it just like we would with text, if that makes sense, okay? So inline, what we do is we're going to be able to use text align center, which absolutely doesn't do anything right now. But on the div, if we display inline, well, first off, it goes away. The reason it goes away is because you cannot put height and width on an inline item, but you can do it for inline block. There it is. And it is centered horizontally, okay? Now we need to get it centered vertically. And the way that we do that is with vertical align middle. Now the reason that it's not working yet is because, again, we are aligning according to some sort of text flow. And our body text is set to whatever the default is, which is 16 pixels. So our line height is also set to that measurement of 16 pixels plus a little bit of spacing, whatever that default is. Well, instead, we can set our line height to the height of the box. Not box, but 100 pixels. And all of a sudden, everything centers up, okay? So we set line height to 100 pixels, and vertical line does the magic. A lot of complicated stuff in here because we are doing some stuff on the parent and some stuff on the child. I'm not a fan. Let's move on. Position, right? Positioning is the way that most people know. And even here, there's a few different ways of doing this. So to start out, everything starts with position relative. If you're going to do positioning, you need that position relative somewhere unless you are operating directly on a child that is a direct child of the body, okay? If you don't put position relative, then this is going to position according to the page, and that's just not what we want, okay? And now everything happens on the child, so position absolute, top 0, bottom 0, left 0, right 0. Nothing is happening. That's because we've set kind of a magic box here that says find these edges and use them to align this. But because the box is forced to be 50 pixels, it can't really respond to any of these, so it needs something else. And the reason is the magic here is that we use auto. In fact, we'll use auto a lot in the upcoming options, but auto does the trick. If we don't have that, it kind of doesn't, it sort of works, but not totally. We need that top and bottom too. You might think you only need top and bottom and not left and right, but for some reason, it's just not there, okay? As soon as you remove left and right, it defaults to this, so you need something, okay? There it is. Moving on, we got position negative margin. So this is kind of like our first versions, but with more complex styles. We have position relative, and everything happens on the div, so we get position absolute, top of 0, left of 0, and now we need to figure out what to do here. Oh, not top of 0, sorry, 50%. Look at me getting in the wrong place. So 50% drives it all the way down because it's the center of the parent, okay? So we have this, we need to bring it back half the width of our black box, okay? So we can do that with margin top of negative 25 pixels and margin left negative 25 pixels, which does that. But again, somehow we've discovered magic numbers again, right? If we change anything about these two boxes, these numbers aren't going to line up. Well, we can go easier, right? We can go to the one that most people know about. So right here it is, position with transform. That is position relative. I don't know what was happening in my display there, but throwing me for a loop, making me confused. Position absolute, top of 50%, left of 50%, just like the previous one. And now we use transform. Translate, and we have two numbers in here. One is negative 50%, and the other one is negative 50%. And everything is centered. This is quite easily the most popular way to center one thing inside of another, okay? So if somebody shows up with this solution, it's good. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a solid thing that we've done for a long time now. The question is, why does it work? And a lot of people haven't quite sorted this in their head. They've been taught this method, but maybe they don't understand what's going on here. Okay. What does top 50% mean? Well, that's top of the parent box. What does minus 50% mean? Well, that's half the width of the child box. So we are taking the top box and subtracting, or taking half of the top box and subtracting half of the child box. Doesn't that just sound exactly like what we did here? Half of the parent box, half of the child box gives us our margin. Except now we're doing it in a way where anything can change in here. The parent can change, the child can change, and because of these numbers, it all just works. So it's important. The very popular solution, but if you don't know how these two numbers play together, then you don't quite got it, right? There's a gap in knowledge there. So now you know. Now you know. Moving on, table. Table works. And the way that table works is that we tell it to be a table, right? Without having to use table elements. In this case, we only want the table cell, so we can go display table cell just like this, and nothing will happen. That is okay. But we can do stuff here, like we can vertical align middle, and we can text align center, and all these should work. Now, if you're paying attention, nothing has changed, okay? And that's because of how table works. Table is expecting to create intermediate steps for the missing items. So if we did display table, it would try to create table row and table cell in memory. It would try to do something there. Because this box, the only parent to this box is a parent, or is the body, sorry, it kind of doesn't do that, which screws things up, okay? So when we are right at the root of the DOM tree, with this div being a parent of being a child of the body, it doesn't work. But as soon as we wrap this in anything else, we get something changing, okay? We get that vertical align middle. Now, the reason that it's not centering left and right horizontally is because, again, this black box is a block level element. It does not respect text align center. So we would either have to do something like inline, we'd have to mash them together, or instead of this, we can just go div margin auto, okay? And that gets the job done. So again, kind of like inline, where we're doing part of it outside and part of it inside to make it all work. Moving on, flex. Flex is fun. I like flex. And it's pretty easy to get into, so we can just display flex. And then on the div, we can set the margin to auto. And now everything is centered. I mean, having the child do the work seems funky to me, so maybe we just go ahead and put it all on the parent if my editor would stop jumping around. So again, display flex, align items center, justify content center like this. And this is the better way because, again, I only have one place to change these. Not the parent and the child, but only the parent, which is good. We can move on a little bit to flex column. I'm actually going to copy this because it is exactly the same thing. So flex column, except here we have flex direction of column, okay? So we're setting the column and nothing changes. Now, really quick, this is why I have this here. What's different? The difference is that the alignment and the justification are flipped. So one goes up and down, the other one goes left and right. Align items, okay? The important part here is that when you're doing alignment and justification, one goes in the block direction and one goes in the inline direction. Justify goes in the inline direction. If you need to remember that, text flows in line. Okay, justify, you justify text. Text flows in line, so that is left and right normally. But as soon as you go column, justify is up and down, and align is left and right. Okay, so very important distinction. You could go ahead and use column, but I mean, it's an extra step. We don't really need it here. Moving on, we get into grid. Grid margin is pretty much exactly the same. In fact, not pretty much. It is exactly the same as the Flex version of this. So we have div, margin of auto, and it works. Again, the child controlling its display within the grid doesn't make much sense to me. So grid align self is very similar to that. Moving down, grid align self, so display grid. Again, on the div, we have align self. I don't have an expansion for this, so align self of center. Justify self. Come on. There we go. Self, center, just like this. And it works. There it is. Okay, I don't need this. But again, these two, we're depending on the child to decide its placement within the grid. I'm not a fan. I'm really not a fan. Again, we can tell the parent to control it all. Whoops, don't forget this. So we can display grid. Stop jumping around. Align item center, justify content center. Exactly the same. Everything lines up. And here's where we come full circle. So if we grab this down here, grid place items, and we go, whoops, it's like I can't type anymore, so weird. Display grid and place items center. And what place items is it's a shortcode for align and justify. In fact, you can put both in here. You could do top. Is it top or is it start? Sorry, start. Just like this. So you can control both of these using one line. So again, we're only doing center, so we just need to do it once and everything works. So that's it. That's 15 different ways to center stuff. Some way better than others. Again, we started with magic numbers on padding, on margin. We went and did some JavaScript stuff. We learned about inline, but there's another magic number. We positioned. This positioning, it's a little bit long, so we changed it up. Used another magic number, not so good. And then we used the probably the oldest and the most reliable version. That's not true. There's a couple reliable versions, but it's like it's like that car that just won't break down on you, right? This thing just it'll always be here and it works. But understand the relationship between these 250s and these 250s, please. That's very important. We looked at table. A little bit of confusion in the way that table works, but we got it to work. And then, of course, a few versions for flex and a few versions for grid, starting with 2 lines above and finishing with 2 lines here. Quick note about place items. It does not work in super old browsers, but those super old browsers are super old, so I wouldn't worry about them anymore. But there you have it. If you're doing an exercise like this, pretty easy, shouldn't take you super long, and you have so many options here, but I would probably go with grid, and if asked to do it a second way, I would default to that old reliable one of position absolute 50-50. Okay? If you have any questions, definitely reach out. If you have another way of positioning, also reach out. Always interested to learn even more about this. It's so interesting to me that I was able to find 15 different versions, and a big thank you to Jesse for starting on that path. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.